The great Martin Luther King Jr. said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." In other words, justice may not be here now, and hard times may fall upon us, but ultimately, it's going to prevail. Our world will get better. Raise your hand if you've heard that quote before. Anyone heard it? Keep your hand raised if you like it. It's powerful, right? It makes us feel good. It reminds us of a more promising future. What if I told you this quote was misguided? You see, in this particular quote, King is expressing a faith in human progress. King, among many, many wonderful things, is a humanist. I think most of you are humanists too. I am here today to talk to you about humanism, question why we hold so many humanistic assumptions, and then hopefully challenge you a little bit and paint you a picture of a different perspective or lens with which you can view the world. But before I do any of that, what is humanism? Well, it's an important and influential idea that stems from Greek and Roman thought, but kind of formally established itself and got its name in the Enlightenment. Now, there are a lot of different versions of humanism, and they're different, but they all share the same core assumption. And that assumption is what I'm talking about today, and it can be expressed in just 5 words. The belief in human progress. Right? Species-level progress. Because this is not progress, say, you and I getting better at ping pong if we work on our forehand. Right? Not that kind of progress. This is not even progress in us coming up with an invention and improving the lives of people around us. This is species level. It is us, humans, collectively, consciously and deliberately, using reason, science, and technology, moving our species toward a kind of utopia. It's long-term human progress. To borrow from John Gray, a British philosopher who is deeply influential to this presentation, humanism is the belief in our species' ability to free ourselves from the limits that frame the lives of other animals. I want to stress an important point. Most of us are humanists. I think the 2 most obvious humanists, or my favorite ones, are Barack Obama and Bill Gates. These 2 men, extraordinary men, embody and just show an unceasing, undeniable faith in humanity, right? Humanism is everywhere. But what if we're all wrong? What if we're not all that special? What if humans are a component rather than the component of our world's narrative? Now, I question the humanistic assumption for 2 reasons. And the first one is there are a lot of important, influential, reasonable ideas that paint a picture in direct contrast to this faith in human progress. Darwinism, Gaia hypothesis, certain Eastern religions, and philosophy of Arthur Schopenhauer in particular, they all paint this non-human-centric worldview. Take Darwinism, for example, and its fundamental insights that 1, we're animals, and 2, the importance of utter randomness to our existence. Our world is the way it is, and we are the way we are because of randomness. Now, we now know that this random evolutionary process has been taking place among mammals for about 200 million years. Civilization has been around for 7,000. It's that red bar right there. Now, that red bar is actually a lot smaller. I just had to make it big enough for you to see. When you combine the relative insignificance you feel after looking at this timeline with the insights that we're animals and that we're kind of the process of randomness, well, it starts to paint a picture of a very non-human-centric worldview, right? You start to kind of see what I'm talking about. But hold on, you might be saying. We are special. Who cares about where we come from or all that? We're clearly different from animals, right? We are unique in a lot of ways. And that's an important point, and I see exactly where you're coming from. But I would argue that some of the stuff that makes us really, really special, the major things that do make us special, science and technology, well, they're not inherently good. Right now, you have many, many countries developing artificially intelligent soldiers. These are machines trained to kill humans without any human intervention at all. What could possibly go wrong? Now, I joke, but if Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and Stephen Hawking sign a letter warning us about the imminent danger of this weapons development, we should be concerned. Further, we should realize that maybe technological development isn't always the best for us collectively. Another great example of this is the development of nuclear technology. It's maybe the first thing you'd think about in this kind of conversation. It's been dangerously close to having a massively negative impact on civilization. The Cuban Missile Crisis, and we're kind of in a situation right now too, if you've been looking at the news at all. And that's not to mention the problems we have with the waste domestically and what to do with that. But there's a third point, or a third kind of aspect of technology that's really important to look at. And that has to do with the impacts of climate change that our generation and the next generation will face. It's important, really important for us to realize this harm is the direct causational result of what was labeled as progress in the 19th and 20th century. Think about that. And while science is probably our best bet to solve all this, definitely our best bet maybe, I can't help but wonder what long-term consequences will flow from our solutions. We don't know. And there lies the problem. The people implementing this science and technology, us, we are oh so flawed. We cannot predict the future, like at all. And we make a lot of mistakes. Okay, wait, hold on. But look where we are now. We've gone through a lot for a really, really long period of time, and we're okay. Our lives are better than our parents', and their lives are better than theirs. Well, that's a pretty solid point. In fact, that's the point that a brilliant psychologist out of Harvard, Steven Pinker, makes. And he's probably humanism's biggest and fiercest supporter, I would say. And he lays out the evidence showing, throughout civilization, humans, we've ebbed and flowed, but we've gotten better. Ethically, just collectively, we've gotten better. And that's a really good point, and it's worth considering. But the problem with this point, and one that he can't answer, and this point can't address, is, will our past be emblematic of our future? Should we be looking in the rearview mirror to see whether there's a turn ahead? I don't think so. Now, at the very, very least, we deserve to question, rather than just blindly assume, in human progress. Now, why am I here? Am I here just to bum you out? I promise I'm not. Right? There are two major, important practical consequences to the rejection of humanism. And the first one is related to public policy. When we reject our faith in human progress, we might advocate for different kinds of public policy than we're used to. Right? This is a dominant Western ideology. It obviously impacts the policy we put forth. A few examples that come to mind are far more armaments treaties, maybe regulation of certain kinds of technology like AI, which we don't know so much about, or at least slow it down a little bit, or perhaps just the straight elimination of our space program. There's just a few possible consequences. They could be debated. But it shouldn't surprise you that maybe what I'm advocating for makes you feel weird, or it wouldn't be what you traditionally want. But I think, as I've shown, we deserve to look at these things from this new resting assumption. Right? Maybe I'm partially wrong, or maybe it's somewhere in the middle or something like that, but we want to look at this from another perspective. And as fascinating as the implications to public policy are, it's not the reason I'm here. I'm here today because the rejection of humanism can change the way we find meaning in our life. Humanism and many followers of world religions, certain religions, see meaning as singular, one big meaning, or an ultimate purpose, right? Now, we do lots and lots of different things, but ultimately, what we do, what it's for, flows into serving a higher power, in the case of religion. In the case of humanism, it's the progression of our species, right? That's why we do what we do. Okay. There seems to be something we like about a grand narrative, about stories, right? They give us answers, and they just make us feel good. And I'm not the first one to point this out. Thinkers as far back as Plato have recognized the importance of this larger meaning or narrative to life. And that led him to advocate for his famous noble lie. That's right, Plato, lover of truth, thought that justice consisted of lying to the vast majority of the public about where they were coming from and their origin. And even though he knew this was wrong, he thought it was necessary for them to find happiness and meaning. But what if he's not right? Do we need this singular meaning, this ultimate purpose, to live and to be happy? I think the answer is it simply depends, and it's up for you to decide. But I think we owe it to ourselves to make that conscious decision. Because a world without humanism is not as sad or nihilistic as you may be thinking, right? I know destruction of ultimate purpose sounds a little bit dreary, but there is something freeing about the removal of a grand narrative. Suddenly, these smaller meanings, these smaller purposes, they become more valuable. They elevate themselves, right? Our day-to-day actions become ends in themselves. We shouldn't help people because helping people will progress our species. We should help people because helping people is fundamentally good. Do we need more than that? Ask yourselves, how will I find meaning? Thank you.